Discipline is what separates the person who dreams of growth from the person who actually achieves it. When it comes to daily self-education, most people wait for motivation to strike, as though learning or building themselves requires a special emotional spark. But the truth is motivation is unstable, unreliable, and fleeting. It's a rush of energy that comes and goes, much like weather. One day sunny, the next stormy. If you depend on motivation to guide you, you'll study when you feel like it. You'll read when the mood is right. You'll push yourself only when it's convenient. That kind of attitude guarantees mediocrity because real progress doesn't come from bursts of effort. It comes from steady, consistent practice. Discipline, on the other hand, is the choice to act regardless of how you feel. It's the decision to open the book when you're tired, to take notes when your mind would rather drift, to think deeply when distraction offers you an easy escape. This daily act of self-education requires an agreement with yourself that you will do the work not because it feels good in the moment, but because you know it is shaping who you are becoming. Think of it like building muscle. If you go to the gym only when you feel like it, you'll be weak. But if you go every day, even on the days you'd rather sleep in, your body transforms. The same law applies to your mind. Every page read, every concept studied, every reflection made is like a mental repetition, and discipline is the force that keeps you lifting. Discipline also sharpens your identity. The act of educating yourself every day becomes more than acquiring knowledge. It becomes proof to yourself that you are capable of growth, that you are not merely a passive consumer of life, but an active participant. Every time you choose discipline over laziness, you strengthen the belief that you are someone who can be relied upon, even by yourself. And that belief is powerful, because if you cannot trust yourself to do the small things like reading 10 pages, listening to a lecture, or reflecting on an idea, how can you expect to handle the larger responsibilities of life? Discipline is training for responsibility. It builds trust between you and your future. It says, I will show up today so that tomorrow I can be more than I am. This is not glamorous, and it will not always feel rewarding in the moment. But the accumulation of disciplined days is what sets apart the wise from the ignorant, the strong from the weak, the leader from the follower. Rely on motivation, and you will stumble. Rely on discipline, and you will rise. Daily self-education is not about feeding yourself when you're hungry for knowledge. It's about teaching yourself to eat even when you have no appetite, because you know the nourishment is essential for survival and for growth. The compounding effect is one of the most underestimated forces in human growth, yet it is at the very heart of daily self-education. People often imagine transformation as a sudden leap, a dramatic breakthrough that changes everything overnight. But that is a fantasy. In reality, the changes that matter most come so gradually that you barely notice them while they are happening. Reading 10 pages of a book doesn't feel life-changing. Watching a thoughtful lecture doesn't feel like it rewired your mind. Reflecting for a few minutes in the evening doesn't seem to shift the direction of your future. But when you repeat these small actions every single day, they accumulate, and over months and years, they transform you into someone entirely different. Knowledge, like money, grows with interest. If you save a small amount every day, you may feel like you are getting nowhere at first, but with time, the interest multiplies until the numbers are staggering. Learning works the same way. One idea builds on another, one skill strengthens the next. One day of effort prepares the ground for tomorrow's. Slowly, almost invisibly, your understanding deepens, your perspective sharpens, your ability to think expands. This is the compounding effect, small, consistent actions building a massive return. The danger is that people give up too early because the rewards are not immediate. You read for a week and nothing seems different. You study a concept and it doesn't instantly change your circumstances. You take notes and they sit there unused, so you stop thinking it's pointless. But what you fail to see is that every one of those actions was adding a layer to your foundation. Learning doesn't always pay off the next day, but it pays off when life demands it, when you're faced with a challenge, when you must make a decision, when others falter and you stand strong because you prepared quietly and patiently. That is the moment the compounding reveals its power. Daily self-education is a long game. The person you are in 5 years is built by the habits you practice now, not by the grand intentions you talk about. And when you invest every day, the return is exponential. You don't just know more, you think differently. You begin to see patterns others miss. You anticipate consequences before they unfold. You carry a quiet authority because you have armed yourself with knowledge that has been absorbed, tested, and lived. The compounding effect also humbles you. It shows you that greatness is not born in a single act of brilliance, but in countless acts of persistence. It removes the excuse of waiting for the perfect time, because the only time you need is today, and the only requirement is to start small and not stop. Imagine where you could be if you chose just 1 hour a day for 5 years over 1,800 hours of self-education. That's the difference between being ordinary and being extraordinary. What feels insignificant now, if practiced daily, becomes unstoppable later. That is the hidden power of compounding. And that is why self-education must be pursued every single day, no matter how small the step seems. Personal responsibility is the cornerstone of daily self-education, because no one else can carry the burden of your growth. Too many people wait for institutions, teachers, or systems to provide them with the tools they need, as if life owes them clarity or wisdom. But life does not owe you anything. If you want to improve, if you want to rise above confusion, ignorance, or mediocrity, you must decide that it is your job to educate yourself. Responsibility means admitting that the quality of your mind, the depth of your understanding, and the sharpness of your skills are not dictated by the world outside, but by the choices you make every day. When you grasp this truth, excuses lose their power. You can no longer blame the lack of opportunities, the failures of education systems, or the neglect of others, because the world's knowledge has never been more available than it is now. Books, lectures, research, courses, conversations, all are within reach. The real barrier is not access but willingness, not circumstances but responsibility. Taking responsibility for your own self-education is an act of courage. It forces you to look at your weaknesses without denial, to confront the areas where you are ignorant, and to admit that you must work to improve them. This is uncomfortable, but it is also empowering, because once you accept responsibility, you realize you are no longer a victim of your environment. You are no longer trapped by what others failed to give you. You become free because you are in charge of your own development. Every time you choose to read instead of wasting time, every time you take notes instead of scrolling endlessly, every time you reflect on what you learned instead of dismissing it, you are claiming ownership of your future. That sense of ownership creates dignity. It is the recognition that you are not merely drifting through life waiting for answers, you are building the answers yourself. The act of personal responsibility also brings discipline and structure to your days. When you decide that self-education is your responsibility, it is no longer optional. You don't wait for inspiration, and you don't quit because someone failed to encourage you. You study because it is your duty to yourself. This mindset transforms learning from a hobby into a moral obligation. The knowledge you gain is not just for personal benefit. It equips you to serve others, to contribute meaningfully to your family, your community, and the world. That is the weight of responsibility. The recognition that your ignorance doesn't only harm you, it's what you can give to those around you. Ultimately, personal responsibility is the act of saying, if I remain the same tomorrow as I am today, that is my fault. It is the refusal to accept stagnation as destiny. By embracing responsibility, you take control of the only thing you truly can yourself. And once you do, daily self-education stops being a task and becomes a way of life, a constant pursuit of becoming wiser, stronger, and more capable than you were yesterday. Life is a constant struggle between order and chaos, and daily self-education is one of the most effective tools you have to bring structure into that struggle. Chaos surrounds you in the form of uncertainty, confusion, and the overwhelming complexity of the world. Without knowledge, you are lost in that chaos, drifting without direction, vulnerable to mistakes, manipulation, and despair. But every time you learn something new, every time you gain understanding, you carve out a little more order. You create a framework that helps you navigate what would otherwise overwhelm you. Knowledge gives form to the unknown, and with it, you stand more capable of facing life's difficulties. Imagine someone who never studies, never questions, never tries to understand. They are like a traveler without a map, stumbling in the dark, reacting blindly to whatever appears in front of them. Now contrast that with the person who reads, reflects, and educates themselves daily. They are not immune to chaos, no one is, but they are equipped with tools to make sense of it. They can see patterns, anticipate dangers, and find solutions. Their mind is sharper, steadier, more capable of turning disorder into something manageable. Self-education builds resilience because chaos is inevitable. You cannot escape the unpredictability of life. Loss, failure, change, and suffering are all part of existence. But if you have prepared your mind, if you have filled it with ideas, wisdom, and practical knowledge, you are not crushed by the unknown. You can face it with strength because you understand that chaos, while dangerous, also holds the potential for growth. Education allows you to see possibility where others only see threat. When everything falls apart, your disciplined habit of learning gives you the ability to rebuild, to reorganize, to find meaning within disorder. This is not just about academic knowledge, it is about perspective. A mind trained daily to seek truth and clarity becomes a mind that brings light into dark times. Order is not rigid control. It is the capacity to make sense of complexity without being destroyed by it. Daily self-education teaches you to think critically, to separate truth from falsehood, to distinguish what matters from what does not. In doing so, it shields you from the chaos of misinformation, distraction, and shallow thinking that drowns so many people today. The more you learn, the more you can stand firmly when others panic. The more you understand, the more you can lead when others collapse. Knowledge creates order within you, and that inner order radiates outward, influencing how you interact with the world. This is why neglecting self-education is so dangerous. If you ignore the responsibility to learn, the chaos of life will not wait politely. It will crash down on you, and without the structure knowledge provides, you will be swallowed by it. But if you dedicate yourself daily to the pursuit of understanding, you create a fortress of order within your mind. You don't eliminate chaos, but you face it with courage. You don't control the storm, but you learn to navigate it. And in that balance between order and chaos lies strength, resilience, and the possibility of a meaningful life. The true measure of self-education is not in the number of books you've read or the amount of information you've collected, but in whether what you learn becomes usable wisdom in your daily life. Knowledge without application is shallow, like water that never reaches the roots of a tree. It looks impressive on the surface, but it nourishes nothing. Practical wisdom means taking what you read, hear, or discover and turning it into decisions, actions, and habits that change how you live. Many people consume endless streams of information, yet their lives remain unchanged because they never translate learning into practice. They mistake accumulation for growth, but growth only occurs when ideas are tested, lived out, and integrated into the fabric of daily existence. When you commit to daily self-education, you must constantly ask yourself, how does this apply to me? How can this idea shape the way I think, the way I respond, the way I lead, or the way I solve problems? An idea that is left on a page has no power, but an idea that is embodied in action has the capacity to alter the course of your life. For example, reading about discipline is not the same as practicing discipline by sticking to your study schedule. Learning about patience means little until you choose to act patiently in a difficult situation. Understanding the principles of leadership is meaningless until you apply them in a group or a project where others depend on you. The bridge between theory and life is where wisdom is built. Practical wisdom also demands reflection. It's not enough to simply consume knowledge. You must slow down and think critically about what you've taken in. You must test it against reality, question it, and refine it. Some ideas will prove useful, others will not. Some teachings will stand firm when tested by experience, others will collapse under pressure. By reflecting on what works and what doesn't, you refine your mind into a tool that is not just full but sharp. This process ensures that what remains with you is not a jumble of disconnected facts, but a coherent framework for living. Another dimension of practical wisdom is humility. You recognize that you don't know everything, and that even the knowledge you do possess may be incomplete or flawed. This humility keeps you open to correction and improvement. It prevents arrogance, the illusion that because you've read a book or taken a course, you've mastered life. Wisdom grows in those who understand that learning is endless, and that knowledge must constantly be adjusted to meet the demands of reality. In the end, daily self-education is powerful only if it becomes embodied. It must move from the page to the practice, from the mind to the moment, from theory to transformation. When knowledge turns into action, it reshapes character, it strengthens judgment, sharpens decision making, and deepens your capacity to live well. That is the difference between being a collector of information and being a person of wisdom. The former looks impressive from afar, the latter changes the world around them. Daily self-education is not just about filling your mind with facts or gathering impressive knowledge. It is about shaping the very person you are becoming. Each day of intentional learning is a small step toward building a version of yourself that is stronger, wiser, and more capable of carrying meaning in life. To neglect this process is to remain stagnant, to drift without growth, and to leave your potential unexplored. But when you dedicate yourself to learning daily, you begin to sculpt your identity with purpose. You are not the same person after a year of disciplined self-education. Your thoughts are deeper, your language sharper, your vision clearer. What you once saw as impossible becomes manageable because you have developed the mind and the will to face it. This process of becoming is not dramatic or sudden. It is gradual, steady, and often unnoticed by others until the difference is undeniable. Self-education is a form of self-respect. By learning daily, you send yourself the message that your future is worth investing in, that your mind and soul deserve nourishment just as much as your body does. You recognize that the person you are today is not the final version of yourself, and you commit to growth because you understand that life demands it. Challenges will come, responsibilities will grow, and if you do not rise to meet them, you will collapse under their weight. But by educating yourself every day, you prepare in advance. You become the kind of person who can carry heavier burdens, who can lead when leadership is required, who can comfort others when chaos strikes. In this way, daily self-education is not just self-improve, meant it is preparation for service, for responsibility, for becoming someone others can depend on. This transformation also brings meaning. Human beings are not satisfied with mere survival. We long for purpose, for the sense that our existence matters. Becoming who you are meant to be requires more than drifting with the currents of life. It requires deliberate effort, discipline, and learning. Each book you read, each idea you wrestle with, each skill you practice shapes the architecture of your soul. You move closer to the person you were capable of becoming, but would never have reached by accident. Without this pursuit, life becomes shallow and aimless. With it, life gains depth, direction, and dignity. What is most remarkable is that this process never ends. There is no final version of yourself that you arrive at and then stop growing. Daily self-education keeps you humble enough to recognize that you can always become more insightful, more compassionate, more courageous, more capable of contribution. The pursuit of knowledge is not about perfection, but about continual progress. And that progress, pursued daily, ensures that your life does not stagnate, but unfolds into its fullest possibility. To commit to self-education is to commit to becoming not just informed, not just skilled, but transformed into someone worthy of the challenges and opportunities of life. Daily self-education is ultimately about becoming who you are meant to be, not merely who you happen to be right now. Every person carries within them a potential self, an individual capable of greater wisdom, deeper strength, and higher responsibility than the current version. The tragedy is that many never approach that potential because they do not engage in the slow, disciplined work of shaping themselves through learning. They drift, they repeat old patterns, they live as if growth is optional. But the truth is that growth is not optional, life demands it. If you fail to grow, life will overwhelm you. If you refuse to improve, you will collapse under challenges that a stronger version of you could have carried. Daily self-education is the process by which you meet that demand. It is how you turn possibility into reality, potential into being. When you educate yourself daily, you are not just gathering knowledge, you are actively constructing the person who will face tomorrow. Every book you read sharpens your mind. Every lecture you study strengthens your perspective. Every reflection you make deepens your understanding. Day by day, you craft an identity capable of standing with more courage and making decisions with more clarity. This process is invisible at first, but over time the difference is unmistakable. You may not notice the change week by week, but a year of daily self-education creates a person vastly different from the one who began. It is like chiseling a statue out of stone. Each day's effort seems small, but eventually the form of greatness emerges. Becoming who you're meant to be also requires shedding who you were. Daily self-education exposes your weaknesses, your ignorance, and your immaturity, and challenges you to outgrow them. This is not comfortable, but it is necessary. To become wiser, you must face the reality of how little you know. To become stronger, you must confront your laziness and push against it. To become a leader, you must first learn to discipline yourself before you can guide others. In this sense, daily education is a constant process of transformation, where the old self is replaced by a stronger one. Each lesson, each idea, each skill adds a layer to the new identity you are building. The deeper reward of this process is meaning. When you commit to daily growth, you begin to see your life not as a series of random events, but as a purposeful journey toward becoming someone who can carry weight, provide value, and live with dignity. You realize that the goal of learning is not merely to know, but to live more fully, to act with greater responsibility, and to contribute to the lives of others. In shaping yourself, you also prepare to shape the world around you. That is the essence of becoming who you are meant to be. It is not about perfection, but about progress, and every single day of self-education is a step further on that path toward your fullest self.